Hello. Good afternoon, our cherished and lovely listeners. It's good to come your way once again. This is HR Digest. HR Digest comes your way every Sunday from 4 p.m. HR Digest is brought to you by Sadet Consult with the support from FA Impressions. FA Impressions for all your branding and your printing needs. You may contact them on 0243 526 781. 0243526781. FA compressions would make your product go wild, on the market. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all our listeners from all over the place. Feel free, let us know where you are joining us from. Just write your name and where you are joining us from, and we would shout out to you. Now, today we are going to discuss a very exciting topic, one that is at the bottom or at the heart of a business, that if you got it right, you know that your business is just on top. It's competitive and you are winning out there. And we're going to have a very seasoned professional join us to discuss that. And I'm excited to be the person hosting one of the industry's finest and seasoned consultant, Mr. Kojo Amissah. We're going to be discussing the topic on organizational effectiveness, and we are going to delve into what the HR should do, the role of the HR when it comes to organizational effectiveness. Now, we have Mr. Kojo Amissah. Kojo Amissah is a strategy and performance consultant at CITAM, where he oversees the provision of high-impact consulting, staffing, and procurement services. He's the lead instructor for the SHRM-CP and SHRM-SCP certification prep courses. He has consulting and training experience in strategic planning, leadership and change management, performance management, compensation and benefits, and others. Mr. Kojo Amissah simply loves HR. He sleeps, he eats, he drinks, whatever. HR, that is what he does, and that's his heartbeat. So we are privileged to have him, and we know we'll not go back the same. So let's welcome on stage Mr. Kojo Amissah, sorry. Mr. Kojo Amissah, I'm excited and privileged to have you.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you, Vera, and thank you for the audience for making time on this Sunday afternoon.
Awesome, right. So, Mr. Kojo Amissah, we're going to be looking at a very topical, topic, ensuring organizational effectiveness. And we're going to look at the role of the HR. And you and I know that HR has a very strategic role to play when it comes to organizational effectiveness. So first of all, we want you to run us through, what does it mean for an organization to be effective? what is the role of the HR in that aspect? What does it mean?
Yeah. I think in preparing for today's session, I figured maybe we need to shift away from all these big language and big acronyms and the rest of it, because sometimes we need to demystify what all this new HR stuff mean. We have big stuff to describe what we do. But then you can also look at it from a simplistic point of view that if you had an 8-year-old daughter, son, niece, or whatever, and comes to you and say, "Mommy, uncle, what is organizational effectiveness?" What are you going to say to the person? And I think that's where we want to take this conversation. And
Right.
effectiveness is basically the English word effectiveness, meaning if an organization sets out to do something, whether they want to sell something, whether they want to run a machine, whether they want to provide some service to somebody, whatever they want to do, the question is, are they able to do it the way they planned it? And if they were able to do it the way they planned it, then in the simplest term, we say they've been effective. Of course, there are other components to it. So I would say organizational effectiveness is the organization's ability to achieve its strategic objectives, meaning whatever
Great.
they have planned to do, they've been able to do it.
Right. The organization's ability to achieve its strategic objectives. Awesome. So, in a nutshell, that is what it is. Now, we are joined here online by Michael watching from Cape Coast, and we have Zachary also watching from Kumasi. You're welcome. All the others yet to put up their names would acknowledge you once we see you. Now, Mr. Kofi, Mr. Kojo Amissah, how can HR contribute to the organizational effectiveness? What role must the HR play?
Yeah. I think let me move on. I have a slide, if you don't mind, just a one-page slide. I hope most of our viewers can see
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Sure.
So when you
Go
look at
ahead.
what I have on the slide, I mean, there are different models out
I,
there
I,
for organizational
I think you
effectiveness.
should. I'm not sure if the slide is up yet.
Yeah, it is up from my side.
Okay.
Can the
All
audience
right.
see?
Yes. Now it's up here. It's up here. So you may go ahead, please.
Okay. So when you look at what HR should do, pretty much it's about everything on the slides, right? Because when an organization makes a lot of profit, does it really mean they are effective? The
Mm-hmm.
answer is I don't know, right? The only way we know they are effective is if they had a plan. Let's say a company makes $5 million profit. They say, wow, this is good. Is it good? We don't know because we don't know what was planned, what was forecasted. So I think the first thing is how does HR help the organization to put a plan together? And normally that plan comes in the form of a strategic plan which sets out their vision, mission, values, how they want people to conduct themselves, and then the specific objectives they want to achieve. So if they are set up objectives to achieve, let's say to make 5 million profit, and they do, then we say they've been effective. So without the strategic plan as the basis, organizational effectiveness really is a non-starter. So that's one of the things HR has to help the organization put in place. And then
Mm.
once you put that in place, organizations are structured in different ways. We have departments, we have units, we have people reporting to others. But I think once you're able to put a strategic plan in place, which talks about what you want to do and so on, then you look at the structure of the organization, whether the structure you have would actually support the strategy that you are going to put in place. So, for example, if this year you want to focus on making sure your customers are getting the best of service, so then service excellence become one of your strategy, then you can look at your structure and say, well, I don't really have a dedicated unit dealing with customers and their issues. So let me revise my structure and maybe put a whole department as customer service or put it under some existing departments and so on. So looking at the structure is key. And I think the last thing I would say about this is it is good to have the plan, it is good to have the structure, but do the people know of its existence and what it means? So then there has to be communication to make sure that employees really understand what you are trying to achieve as an organization. And that is where it begins.
Awesome, thank you. We still have Nelly joining us and Agnes Sakite from African Resource Management. Awesome. Now, I picked from what you just presented that first of all, there must be a strategic plan, and then the structure must accommodate the strategic plan. And then, of course, there must be communication, must cascade down all the way to all the employees so that we have that support from the whole team trying to achieve a particular objective. So that is basically what the starting point for HR. And largely, HR should be the one championing the strategic plan in the organization. Awesome. Now, I see you have already projected something that was my next questions to run us through some of the organizational effectiveness models. So please, if you could just run us through those.
Okay. So once you have this thing, I think the important part is the culture. When we say the culture of the organization, you can have two institutions doing the same service. But then you go into this organization, wow, these people, they are like this, they are like that. They behave this way. One of the organization, you like the way people behave, where behavior could be the way they conduct themselves, the way they receive visitors, the way they deal among themselves, anything. So I think as an organization, whenever we talk about organizational culture, normally it is controlled by the type of value statement we put across. But on the other hand, before we put out the value statement, we really, management or the organization needs to be able to sit down and describe vividly what should it look like. So I can say I want an organization where every employee is happy, every employee like gels with every employee, one another. Every employee sees a customer when they ask a question, whether it pertains to their jurisdiction or not, they are eager to answer. So you need to be able to create that vivid image of the culture that you desire. Once you do that, then you can coin values out of it, which will basically help to promote that culture. And when you look at organizations, they all have value statement, which has a lot of things. One of the ones that I really like for most organizations has integrity. And then you go to a lot of organizations, integrity is the last thing on everybody's mind. So it tells you that coining those words, recently working with an organization, I said, look, don't go and put in integrity when you really don't mean it, right? So you really look at something simple, behaviors that you cherish, that you think you can live, rather than putting all the traditional big words, integrity and all of that. Somebody say, I want a happy workplace. That's it. Whatever that means, they will define it, they will talk about it. And then you put in some programs, some interventions. So sometimes you have team building activities, you're educating people, you are telling people how to react to certain situations, you're asking your customers, how are we living the values that we are espousing? By so doing, you do that over a period and you realize that all your employees are behaving in manners consistent with your values. Because what they say is there's a saying that you can have all the best strategy out there, but if you don't have the right culture, your strategy doesn't exist. So I think let's focus on building a culture that we want, that we desire, rather than coming up with all these fanciful things about the values where people talk about integrity, professionalism. I think it's like it cuts across most organizations, it becomes like some cliche. So you define your culture and you make sure you have programs that will help people live that lifestyle or those behaviors exhibited. And then the next thing you go, can I continue or you want to
Yes,
interject?
please go ahead. I'm fine. Yes.
And I also want people to be able to post questions if they do have it so that we don't have to like finish the whole lecture and come back. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So I think once you are being able to define the culture and you come up with programs, let me talk about some of the programs. Some organizations, just to remind people of what it is, they'll have screen pop-ups describing certain acceptable behaviors and non-acceptable behaviors. Sometimes if Vera did something good last week, it pops up and they describe it and everybody gets to know. Some will have, let's say, if they have a friendliness week, They will do t-shirt friendliness where everybody is expected to exhibit some level of there are just too many programs that I cannot list on this program that
Right.
organizations embark on to get people to live their values. So when you think of the culture, describe it, come up with values that describe what you are trying to achieve, and then come up with programs to get people to understand. The key thing then is, do your people have the right competencies to be able to do the things that you want to do? So then I think employee development takes a center stage at this point, where your training and development programs are just towards the strategic plan. So some people call it demand driven, where you are training people not because the training program is good. Of course, if it's a compliance type of training, whether you like it or not, the regulator says you should train. But other than that, some of the programs you really have to look at people's ability to execute what is on your strategic plan and craft training programs that actually meets those needs. And one of the things that we do, if let's say a company said that organizes a public training program, of course you can just attend if you think the content is good. But if you are bringing SEDAT into your organization to do the training, then you really need to go into some final details to really understand the real problems so that you can work with the consultant to fine tune the training to equip your people. And then, of course, how do you build great teams? We all know that working in silos doesn't really solve the problem. So, how do you work in great
Yeah.
teams? And then you also focus on building teams, doing team activities. Sometimes organizations will go offsite just to have fun. And at times you think they are wasting money, but they are just getting people to loosen up so that you can connect well with each other, so that we can understand that this work supports that work, this work supports that. Normally they say somebody's output is your input. And all of this losing up exercise that we do and call team building actually helps to enhance effectiveness. And then I think the third thing we have to do with the employee development is having some type of a performance management system which actually defines the outcomes from people and help them to achieve those outcomes. So I think from the employee development side, this is where you need to look at. You need to look at skills that are relevant to the objective set. You need to look at effective teams, and then you need to look at performance management system, which helps. And I think, let me emphasize, it helps the employees to become better. So you set objectives for them, you are in tune with them, you are helping to identify weaknesses, and then try to fill in the gaps so that they can actually achieve. Are we okay? Do we have any comments or
Yes.
questions coming through?
Right. No questions from our audience as yet, but let me just chip in there. You mentioned that we should not be working in silos because at the end of the day, somebody's output is somebody's input. So it's very necessary that HR, it appears to me, having gone through all these effectiveness model, I'm seeing that HR is really at the center of it all. Because when you run through organizational culture, it's about the people. So HR must champion that. When you come to employee development, HR must champion that through the various organizational line managers and so on and so forth. Then leadership development. And I'm sure you're going to go on to process improvement and then, of course, employee engagement, as I see there. So everything bothers, it's centered around HR as much as possible. And HR should be able to champion this so that the organization should be able to measure its effectiveness in the long run. That is basically it, isn't it?
Yes, yes. So I think
Right.
what you said is right. I normally I tell people that HR is the doctor of the
Mm,
organization. So
mm,
if the
mm.
organization is not effective, meaning the organization is sick, and if the organization
Right.
is sick, who is the doctor? And it's HR.
Doctor.
HR is a
Right.
doctor who comes in to diagnose. Right? All of these, there's a bit of diagnosis in there. You have to diagnose
Mm,
exactly what the problem is, because you don't just go and build a culture if you have not diagnosed what is wrong today and
mm.
what will decide tomorrow. You don't go and
Right.
do training if you have not diagnosed anything. or team effectiveness. What is the problem with our current team formation and team cohesiveness? So all of this, HR comes in, work with line manager and employees to do some diagnosis and then come up with some recommendations of things that we have to do. But once
Right.
you really do this, the leadership thing is key, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you look at leadership these days, if you look at organizations, especially the big ones, you realize that leadership programs is not just for those at the top, the directors and the managers and senior management. It's
Yeah.
almost for everybody, team leaders, supervisors, and everything. So, how do you really look at your leadership development? I think the focus is more of the content of what is delivered, which is when you have the middle managers, the supervisors, they train in operational leadership, meaning how do you get the day to day going by motivating people and getting results. Whereas when you look at the top guys, then we are looking at how do we get them to sit today and look at the organization into the next 5 years, into the next 10 years, and project something, right? So leadership is developed at all levels to make sure that those at the operational level are getting what it needs to really motivate people to get it done. And those at the top keep dreaming and sharing the dream so that people can imbibe the dream. In all of this, we have to be coming up with new ways of doing things. The environment itself too is coming up with new dynamics of doing things. So then you cannot talk about leadership development and not talk about change management. So as we
Awesome.
are doing the
Okay.
leadership development, we are getting people to understand that the environment is not constant and our ability to adapt is really key.
Okay. Right. Mr. Kojo, thank you very much. Now, I have a question from Michael Kisi. He says, how does the HR function of recruitment contribute to organizational effectiveness? How does the HR function of recruitment contribute to organizational effectiveness?
It said, how does the HR function of what?
Yes, recruitment. How does recruitment contribute to organizational effectiveness?
Okay, so this is the case. Who are we recruiting and why are we recruiting? That's very important. And where would you find the answer? Michael, if I ask you, you will find the answer in the strategic plan. Because the strategic plan is what is saying we are going to sell so many boxes of orange juice. And then in the strategic plan, it's saying the orange juice, we are targeting the high end shops. So based on that, if we are looking for people to sell, we are looking for specific skills that can sell in high-end shops. Because those who can sell in the markets, like you go to Agbogbloshi and Makola, is more of like a wholesale type of thing. We have a different setup and different relationship that can sell to those markets. Whereas you want to go to Max Smart and the rest of them, there's a bit of finesse there. We need some different levels of skills. So what I say, when we say your recruitment is effective, that means you have recruited the person who can actually sell the product to the target market. Uh, we are all selling oranges. I will recruit people who have a bachelor's degree and it's okay. Somebody say, no, you don't need bachelor's degree. It's just about orange juice. So what analysis did you make to recommend that we need a bachelor's degree to do selling of orange juice? And I think your ability to actually make that determination, and most importantly, if you come up with the persons required and you recruit them and they hit the ground running and they're able to help you achieve your volumes, that means your recruitment has been effective. People have recruited, and over a period, we realize that no, that was bad recruitment. The people are there, they are not really fit for the role, and then they cannot deliver. So I think recruitment is key in all of this.
Awesome. Right. So right from the beginning of SEDAT, the HR digest, the recruitment was one of the things we discussed, and we said that recruitment was key to the organizational performance because if you get it wrong, like you said, then it means that your output is also going to suffer, your productivity is going to suffer, and of course, it will affect everything in the organization. Now we have David Nano joining us from India. We have Esther Oye from Accra, and then Christiana Me here also from Accra. You're all welcome. Great. So we are discussing organizational effectiveness, the role of the HR. Now, Mr. Kojo Amissah, I'm just thinking very wildly. So if the HR is not positioned properly on the structure right from the beginning, talked about the structure, I talked about strategic plan, which should come from the HR. Now the HR is not positioned properly on the structure. How that person still go in there and ensure organizational effectiveness?
Okay. So the first thing is today I saw a post from somewhere where the people say the question says companies are not doing well and they are thinking of laying off their HR department. Okay, getting rid of the HR department because they are not needed. The line managers can recruit and so on and so forth, and it's true. So my question to all of us is something that we really need to think about, that if you are the HR, why should we not kick you out? Now we are a company of, let's say, 30, and there are three HR. We want to lay off people. We sell orange juice. HR, you don't sell orange juice. So why shouldn't we kick you out? And that is a question that we all need to answer, because if you answer that question, well, probably we have the answer to this. So when we talk about HR, do they see your value as in a strategy contributor, or they just see your value as, okay, we need somebody, do the job description, do the advert, organize the interview, or we see your involvement as it's critical to the success of the business? So the way you position yourself structurally depends on the perception about HR in your organization. And the perception about HR in a lot of organizations are not that good. HR is seen as, okay, when there's a problem in terms of employee problem, disciplinary issues, and all of that. If that's the way you've been positioned, then probably you cannot get yourself to the right place. I normally recommend HR reporting directly to the head of the business, be the director, being the MD, chief executive, whatever. That is my first point of call. And even if that is not the case, how do you position yourself so that HR has a dotted line to the
Right.
chief executive? And I think you can push for that agenda if you bring out your value in terms of business improvement, in terms of sales. So you stop thinking about all these people issue and talk about business. And then your solution will be the people issue. But your conversation should always be, we are not selling enough, our customers are complaining, there's delays in delivery, and so on and so forth. So, and then the chief executive said, why are we not selling enough? He said, because there's delay in delivery. What's the delay? Maybe we lack adequate staff, or they haven't been trained, or maybe their attitude are not good. They have all this like a discal attitude where they are not time conscious. So the MD says, what are we going to do? And then you come up with some interventions. So the more of such things that you do, then you can actually move yourself to the top. Some organizations, existing big organizations, are already structured properly, but for some of the organizations, HR is still struggling. And at best, they report to the finance director for the simple fact that you waste money. So let's put you under somebody who can control how you waste money. So I think we need to really come up with a value proposition of why the organization should keep us, and that will get us to report directly to the MD.
Right. So getting you right, it means that even if originally the organization didn't position HR at the right place, HR should be able to weave its way up by the way they project their strategic plans and make inputs in all the strategic objectives of the organization, so that at the end of the day, their worth will be seen and valued, and then they'll begin to make inroads to be able to support the organization to be effective at the end of the day. Right.
Yes.
So over to the HR. We need to weave our way out, even if originally we're not positioned properly to be able to make those inputs. We have Agnes Sakite. Agnes is asking, when should a company have an HR person?
Okay, that question is always asked, but then let me twist it a little bit. When should a company have an HR function? Okay, from day one, you should have an HR function. You may not necessarily have Agnes sitting there as the HR manager, but there has to be a function where we perform recruitment, a function where we do compensation at the basic level, a function where we manage employee performance, and a function where we look at employee competency. So at that point, you said we are a small organization, we are 3 or 4 or 5, so we don't need a dedicated HR person. But we have to still outline these functions and see whether there's somebody that can work with an external HR entity. I mean, there are a lot of consulting companies who are working with micro and mini SMEs and you name it. So you need to really get some advice, whether it's free or from a consultant that is not going to charge you a lot, to be able to make sure that your HR function is part of the business from the word go. And then as things progress and you think you can afford salaries and stuff because your marketing team are selling and now revenue is coming in, then you can hire a person. So there's always the difference between the function being in existence in your organization and a human being carrying the title. I think we should focus on the function, the HR function, rather than the
Yeah.
HR person or individual.
Yes.
So I think, Agnes, the answer to your question is you have to plan the business with the HR function from day one. And then either you are providing that in-house or you are consulting some 1 day a week with some external consultant. Because if you look at some of these small organizations, they will still get a consultant to do conditions of service and you name it. It's part of having an HR function in the organization.
Awesome. Okay. So there's a comment there before we go on to our next couple of questions. I think from Michael Kisi, he says that I think issues of effective compensation and conditions of service can best be dealt with a professional HR department, not line managers, who may not have expertise in effective compensation management. Indeed, effective salary grade structure can best be formulated by an effective HR department. So that was a comment from Michael, just to add up to what we have been saying all along. Now, Mr. Kojo Amissah, we've talked about having a strategy plan, having the structure in place, communicating and all that. But at the end of the day, having all these in place, how do we measure the organizational effectiveness? Is there a tool to measure it so that we know that indeed we set up to do this and we've actually achieved it and so we are effective? How do we do that?
Okay. So there are different ways of looking at it. But at the end of the day, it all results in whether what is stated in your strategic plan has been achieved. Okay. So you can tell me, I did my employee development and it's perfect. Our culture is this, is the best culture you can have. Our leadership is top notch. And so you can tell me all of that. But at the end of the day, the objective set in the strategic plan, if we have not achieved it, then you cannot claim effectiveness. So to measure, the first point of call is so the objectives in the strategic plan become what? Your lagging indicators. Then you can have all of this, measure the effectiveness of your culture, measure your employee development, measure your leadership, measure your process, measure your employee engagement, all as leading indicators. Meaning leading indicators are things that you can monitor so that when the indicators are not favorable, you can work on it. Then, if you do those things right, they will lead to the lagging indicator, which is the ultimate. So, the first thing is, how do we even set the objectives? Are they smart enough to be measured? That is number one. Let me just give only one. We want to sell 2,000 metric tons of orange juice. So that's in the strategic plan, and that is a lagging indicator. At the end of the day, we'll do everything, and we ask ourselves, were we able to sell 2,000 metric tons of orange juice. Now we go to the
Right.
organizational culture. There's a way to measure the culture. A lot of it has to do with feedback and perception and some survey that goes with measuring employee behaviors. You do that. When you look at employee development, there's a framework to measure employee competencies. There's a framework to measure teamwork, and then of course, all should result in our performance scores. Leadership, there are there are frameworks out there and different measures of leadership effectiveness. Those are there. Process improvement. When we talk about efficiency, automation, and all of that, there are ways of measuring this. Employee engagement, there's a way they call it employee engagement index and all of that. So you can measure, let's say, number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, but then they have to culminate in everything that is in number 1 for us to say we have been effective. Yeah. Does that help?
Yes,
Hello?
Mr. Amissah, I seem to, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought I lost you at some point.
Okay,
Yes.
so what I was trying to explain is the key is the strategic plan, the objectives in there has to be smart, has to be measurable. That's number 1. By the end of the day,
Right.
as you go along, all the others from the number 2, 3, 4, and 5, there are different frameworks of measuring organizational culture, employee development, leadership development, and so on. So you need to have all those indicators and frameworks to measure all of this to be able to, and these are leading indicators. All it means is if they are not right, your end result may not be right. So as you are measuring them, you are fine-tuning those areas, and hopefully by the time you finish, you would have achieved the strategic objectives.
Right. Okay. Mr. Kojo, sir, something comes to mind now. Employee engagement. Employee engagement. How does that impact organizational effectiveness?
So the essence, the mere definition or explanation of employee engagement itself is the answer to your question. I think it's defined in various ways, but then it says
Yeah.
whatever you do to get employees to willingly go above and beyond. Okay, so that means if I
Yeah.
am the one selling this orange juice and it's 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. and a customer says, I'm delaying, can you wait on me? And I'll actually wait on them. It's going above and beyond. Whereas somebody will look at it and say, after all, you don't treat me well, you don't pay me well, you don't train me, you don't give me all the resources. So why am I going to stay here after 5? So when you look at employee engagement, it's really key. What he's saying is, are the employees willing and happy to go above and beyond? Most of us, we are in the office and our bosses are watching us. And then we are working and we pretend to be working and all of that. When the bosses leave, we say, oh, the guy is off. Let me also take. After all, the job doesn't belong to my father. That attitude does not show a high level of engagement. Engagement means the managers, the supervisors, the organization are treating you in a way that you think meet your expectation in terms of respecting you, paying you well, training you, giving you the right assignment, providing all the support. And it comes with so many desires from the employees. When that happens, on its own does not mean anything. It just means the employees are satisfied. But how do you now motivate the satisfied people to give out their best, to go above and beyond? That's employee engagement. So if you're able to achieve high scores of employee engagement, it should actually translate to productivity, which of course should translate to whatever is stated on your strategic plan. So
Right.
high employee
Right.
engagement, high productivity, high performance, and then meeting strategic goals.
Right. Okay. And we are getting very close to wrapping up. Mr. Kojo again. Now, we have said all that there is to say. We've walked through what it means to have an organization effective. We've walked through the models. We've Can you hear me?
I think I lost you somewhere.
Right. So we've walked through all the processes, including the effective models that we could actually look at whilst we are ensuring organization effectiveness. Now, having set off to achieve some organizational effectiveness, how do we ensure that we have some maintenance culture? Um, I mean, mostly we all know it is an open secret, so to say. Ghanaians have a problem with maintenance. We start something and then in the middle of it we get it off. Now, this is an organization we are talking about. This is productivity issues we are talking about. How do we ensure that there is a maintenance of the organizational effectiveness model? How do we
Okay.
ensure effectiveness?
If you go to some of the engineering firms in Ghana, what they have is a maintenance plan where they have scheduled maintenance, and then I think some are corrective maintenance, right? So the mere fact that they have a plan, the scheduled maintenance will say change the oil every 3 months. So there's no questions asked, because if you are not changing the oil, somebody is on your toes and checking on you. Why are you not changing the oil? It's 3 months. And then we have the corrective ones, which is even though the 3 months is not there, go and observe the plant every day. And if you see a leakage or if you see a drop in the oil, go and change it. So until all this employee engagement works, it shouldn't be a matter of you thinking, oh, we are doing some type of organizational effectiveness. You have to put a plan together. Because if you put a plan together with the milestones and what you measure and all of that, then it's as simple as you following the plan. And then for HR, that plan becomes part of your own performance target. So just like the engineer will have a maintenance plan, when we are talking about anything, any intervention, there has to be a plan which seeks to look out for its beginning to its completion. And then with milestones, what we do in terms of data collection, in terms of reporting, in terms of taking corrective action, all embedded. And then somebody's name is attached to it. So it's somebody's responsibility. So I cannot say we have a program there and it doesn't have anybody's name. Then, of course, so if it has my name on it and you come and I couldn't do it, then there has to be some justification of the budget didn't come or something happened that I couldn't do it. So let's put a plan together to make it work.
Right, great, great, great. So, Kletos, Parakwesi Boatin says, always great to listen to you, Kojo. Now, we have about a minute or two to wrap up. Can you give us your final words?
My final words is every time, year in, year out, ask yourself, has the organization and its people moved to the next level? Because that's what organizational effectiveness means. So when you poll your people, would they say, oh, since I came here, I've learned a lot. Since I came here, I've done this a lot. And then can the organization itself say, oh, we have grown, or our profits are going up, and so on and so forth, or we are lean. So you have to look out for those things. And then when you are not getting those answers, then you sit back and say, why are we not getting those answers where employees say, oh, I love it, we've grown, our salaries have grown, the training and everything. And then put up a team and then go into the whole diagnosis and then come up with some recommendations and interventions that, and again, when you are doing this, it comes with a budget. Your training will come with a budget. Your team building activities will come with a budget. And then you have to justify to management that all of this is going to cost me 50,000 CDs. And I believe that when we are able to do this effectively, instead of selling 2,000 metric tons of orange juice, we'll be able to sell 2.5 thousand. So I think there always has to be a justification for spending money, being an HR or being in any other area of the business.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Mr. Amissah. We've learned so much. We've learned that at the end of the day, year on year in, year out, we have to measure whether we've moved from A point to B point to know that we are growing. Have the organization grown since you put in those measures? Those are some of the things we have to look out to ensure that we have an organizational effectiveness impact there. So the role of the HR is very critical in this. Mr. Amissah, we thank you so much for enlightening us. I think we have a few comments there. We're wrapping up in just about 30 seconds. Effective maintenance plan have to be in place to keep the organization to its expectation. That's Felix Wanukamado. Right. Thank you, Felix, for joining us. George Arthur says, secondly, I have a far below belt. Consequently, these outsourced staff enjoys a maximum 20% of benefits in terms of comparing it to the permanent staff. How can HR in this instance help in ensuring the said employees are motivated and also ensuring organizational effectiveness? I think where Mr. Amissah spoke about a lot on that. It's about the culture, it's about the engagement of the employees, and a lot more. Our time is fast spent. Maybe we'll look at it and see whether we can address it in the subsequent sessions. George Arthur, thank you so much for that submission. Well, we come to the end of another awesome moment of learning. We have come to learn, to relearn, and unlearn, and that is a great session. So HR said that HR Digest was brought to you by the Sedat Consult with support from the FA Impressions. You may contact FA Impressions on 0243 526781 for your branding and printing needs. Contact them on 0243 526781 for your branding and printing needs. Thank you, Mr. Kojo Amissah. Thank you, all our lovely listeners and audience from all over the world. Thank you so much for listening. We will post the link, a recorded version for those who might have missed to listen in. And that will be all for now. Thank you and
Thank you.
ciao to
Thank you.
all.
Bye
Right.
to you all. Have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Yeah.